Hey everybody, it's Dana and welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to be playing with the December 2022 My Monthly Hero Kit. This kit this month is going to give you a 6x8 clear stamp set, 15 coordinating frame cuts, a 4 and about a quarter by 5 3/4 cling stamp, 4 sheets of pitch black cardstock, and rose gold pigment ink, and that is in a mini size. All right, let's go ahead and get started. I'm going to start out with some light blue cardstock, and I'm going to do some ink blending with the Deep Ocean Core ink from Hero Arts. Now, this color right here that I'm ink blending on is called Mist. And the reason I'm starting with the blue is because I want this to be like an easy blend without seeing some of the white paper. So I've told you guys before, if you want to ink blend, start with a color cardstock. So I knew that I was going to be using blue and purple today for my ink blending. So I decided to start out with blue cardstock. It just kind of makes it easier for the ink blending process. You can see how nice and juicy my Amethyst ink pad is, and that's going to allow me to really do some great ink blending because my pad is really nice and juicy. So I'll come in from the bottom of that piece of paper and I'm going to blend up until those two colors meet. Now remember, because I'm using a lighter blue, it's really going to help me not to have that stark white peek through between these two colors. So just go ahead and keep in ink blending until these two colors kind of meet in the middle. I'll do a little bit of overlapping, and this is going to be a gorgeous little backdrop for our card today. So once I get those two colors to meet, we have this gorgeous ink blend background. I am going to come back in and just kind of pick up the little bit of residue that's left on my craft mat, and that's going to help me with that transition between the two colors. So don't forget, if you have ink left on your mat, use it. All right, I love this ink blend. I'm going to go ahead and set this aside, and we're going to start working on the elements for this card. Now, I knew right away that I wanted to do some watercoloring today. So I did grab my black cardstock from Hero Arts, and I'm going to use just a few of the elements from the stamp set. Now you can see we have so many images on here. I believe there's 15 because there's 15 coordinating dies or frame cuts. So I'm going to just grab maybe 2 or 3 of these. I don't know if I'll use them all, but I just want to make sure that I stamp them all right now. So I do know I want to use this cute little ladder that has like clouds at the top. I think it's so pretty. And it's also going to give us some height on our card. So all the products that I'm using today are going to be linked in the description box below, so you guys can pick those up. And then you can go ahead over to my blog and you'll be able to see close-up pictures of the finished card as well as links to the blog hop. So don't forget, every month we have a really great blog hop, and you get the opportunity to win a gift certificate from Hero Arts. So just make sure to hop along on the blog hop for your chance to win. You just have to comment on how lovely our creative team did, and then you'll be entered for a chance to win. All right, so I went ahead and I lined those up. Now I'm going to give you a little bit of a tip on how I did this today. First thing I want to do is go ahead and coat my paper so none of my embossing powder is going to stick. And then I'm going to start out with my clear and watermark ink from Hero Arts. So I want to make sure that I stamp this a couple of times. Remember, anytime I'm watercoloring and I show you guys, watercolor paper has texture to it. So you want to make sure when you're stamping on textured paper, you might want to stamp it once or twice, maybe even 3 times, just to make sure that you're going to get a really good impression when you go ahead to heat set this. So I went ahead and I'm just going to grab my little tool here just to make sure that I get that ink right into the grooves of that paper. And sometimes you can kind of see where your image is, especially like if you're doing it on this dark cardstock like I am, you'll be able to see the watermark image. I just want to be on the safe side here, and I'm going to stamp it one more time. Now, I didn't probably need to stamp it 3 times, but I just figured I'd rather be safe than sorry, because once I start putting on this embossing powder, it's going to be all cheroot if I did not get a good stamp on this. Now, when I go to heat emboss this, I'm first going to start out with the Hero Arts Clear Embossing Powder. And there's a reason why I'm going to do that. Just hold on and I'll let you see it. So I'm going to go ahead and tap off any excess that I have here. And now remember, I stamped in the clear embossing ink, and now I have clear embossing powder. So when I do that, I'm going to have more of a watermark effect, not necessarily like a crisp image. And I'm doing that for several reasons today. I don't want this to be stark white. So by stamping it first in the clear embossing ink with the clear embossing powder, it's going to be almost like I said, like a watermark. So once I have that covered up and I know I have my powder everywhere, I am going to heat up my heat gun, make sure it's nice and hot before I begin melting this embossing powder. And I like to also heat from the front and the back. One, because that really allows the embossing powder to kind of get a chance to melt on both sides, and it actually speeds up the process as well. Now I'm going to put this right back into my MISTI because I did not remove the stamps. Now this is a way to get a image that's not crisp white, more of a gray white. So now I'm coming in with my unicorn ink here, and this is a pigment ink, and I'm going to stamp right back over this image again, even though it already has the clear embossing powder on it. I'll go ahead and stamp that down, make sure I get a good impression. And as you can see, that looks like really stark white. But when I go to heat set this again, that stark white is going to kind of fade back a little bit. I am going to come right back in with that clear embossing powder, the same embossing powder I used on the first run, and I'm going to go ahead and pour this all over the pigment ink. Now, what's so great about that pigment ink, if you were using white on white, that white would be a crisp white. But in this case, I want the white to be a little bit set back. So once I start heat setting this, remember I had the clear underneath. This white is not going to be as stark. It's going to almost give me, like I said, like a gray white. So as you can see here, it's not stark white and it's not clear. It just gives a really cool, different effect. All right, now I want to come in with some metallic watercolors. I just felt like because this stamp set is literally out of this world, I decided that I wanted to add a little bit of shimmer and shine to this card today. Now, if you want to see the card I had already made for the countdown, you can head over to my blog and find that as well. I'm just going to use a couple of colors of blue here and a couple colors of purple because that's going to match the background that we created. So I just take my little pipette and I'm just adding water to the center of each color that I need to use just to go ahead and get that activated. Anytime you're using any kind of metallic or shimmer, you need to really make sure that your watercolors are activated before you start trying to watercolor with them. Okay, so I just sped up this process here. I'm just dropping in all of those pretty metallic colors just so I can get this color palette to match with what I've already done. So this is super easy to do. You can totally do this with Copic markers if you wanted to, or even color pencils. Now, if you're new to my channel, I would love for you to subscribe and check out all of my tutorials when I'm using these Hero Arts products. All right, I'm going to come in and I'm going to make my clouds that gorgeous purple and blue. Again, just really blending those colors together. Again, I want my color palette to be kind of seamless between my elements and my background. And this is a great way to make sure that your card is really cohesive when it's finished. I'll just finish up a little bit of that ladder. And then all I have to do at this part is heat set this. Now, I don't want to heat set it too much where I start melting that embossing powder again, but I do want this to dry back so I have an opportunity to go ahead and get this card finished and get these images die cut. All right, I heat set that just enough and look how beautiful these colors look. These are going to work perfectly with my background. All right, now I want to bring back in my background piece, but I do want to add a little bit of that splatter of that metallic watercolor as well. So I'm just going to grab a larger paintbrush get some of that metallic on there, and I'm just going to flick some of the blue and the purple onto the background, just so I have some of this color that is on the images that I watercolored onto this background as well. Now, this is just an extra step. If you're making this background, you don't have to do this, but I'm just kind of like crazy in love with this watercolor. And again, all the products will be linked below. And now I have this shimmery little background. Now, like I said, all of the images in the kit have coordinating dies. So if you're going to be die cutting this on watercolor paper and metallic watercolor, make sure when you're taping down your dies not to tape down the part that has the color or the watercolor on there, because you don't want it to tear. So as you can see, I'm kind of putting my purple tape towards the outside of the die because I don't want this purple tape to pull up any of that color. And usually if you're doing this and it was colored with Copic markers on regular white paper, this would be a no-brainer. I wouldn't have to do this. But because I'm using watercolor paper and that shimmer, I do not want to lose any of that when I run this through my die cut machine. All right, back to our background. I decided to pull out a scrap piece of that black cardstock to give my image a landing point. So I want to have like the ladder on the bottom, the little earth at the top. So I decided to cut just a banner of the Hero Arts black cardstock, and I'm going to go ahead and lay down those same exact colors onto this panel here. That's again, it's just going to keep pulling in that shimmer and keeping this card very, very like galaxy-like and full of color. So I'm just putting in some of that color randomly, making sure all of it blends. And look how gorgeous this is. This is going to be such a pretty card. Once I get that in there, I can go ahead and heat set this color. And this is going to be the spot that I'm going to land my sentiment. Now look how gorgeous this is. I have all of the colors from the ink blending, and look how perfectly that matches with our background. So I went ahead and picked out one of the sentiments from the kit, and I went ahead and stamped that onto my card panel. I am going to brush off any of that extra embossing powder. And it's okay if I have a little bit of that embossing powder left. It's just going to add a little bit more texture to the card. Now, if you see the card panel up there on the left-hand side, I did go ahead and hit that with the Shimmer spray from Hero Arts just to give it a little bit more depth. Now I can go ahead and heat set this. And again, this is going to be a perfect spot for my sentiment and a nice break in my card panel. All right, I went ahead and trimmed this piece down, and look how pretty that looks. Now I can go ahead and start building up my card. I have a piece of pitch black cardstock that's already been placed down onto a white card panel. And then I can go ahead and place down this piece on top. Now, the reason I wanted to use the black cardstock is, remember, we did black watercolor paper for our ladder. So I wanted to pull in a little bit of that black. All I have to do at this point is start assembling my card. Now, don't forget, you can subscribe to these kits every single month so you do not miss out on your kits. Once these kits sell out, they sell out, and that is it. All right, so I'm going to bring back in my ladder and my little earth, and look how gorgeous this looks. I love the shimmer on this, and I like the stark white of the sentiment. So as you can see how the ladder looks more like a little bit of a gray white compared to the sentiment. So I'm going to go ahead and glue down these additional pieces on my card, and my Galaxy card is absolutely stunning. Again, I love how this card came out. Now at this point, I felt the need to add a little bit more white. So I have my Hero Arts watercolor here in white, and this is a liquid watercolor, which is fantastic. And I'm just going to grab just a little bit of this and put it onto my acrylic block. I'll add a little bit of border to this, and this is going to give me a little bit of that white element to pull into this card. So I just wet that down a little bit with water, and I'm just going to flick this, kind of going from the top left all the way down to the right. I don't want this everywhere. I just want it to be a little bit of a white element to pull in that white from the sentiment. And I just have it going nicely across the card, and it's not covering up my sentiment or my elements. All right, everybody, that is the card for today. Thank you so much for hanging out with me. I hope you enjoyed this tutorial, and I will see you guys over on the blog. Make sure to comment for your chance to win. All right, everybody, I will see you in another card video soon. Take care, and I'll see you again soon. Bye-bye.